You know that feeling when you come home from a big family trip and you're somehow more tired than when you left? Your kids mostly remember the hotel pool and maybe one moment when things actually slowed down. If you've ever looked at your itinerary and thought, this looks impressive on paper, but I don't know how my real child is supposed to live inside these days, this conversation is for you. Today, I want to talk about slow luxury travel with kids and a kind of luxury that has nothing to do with marble lobbies or five-star restaurants unless you really need it. But today it has everything to do with time. Time to notice, time to rest, time to actually be with our children in the places we work so hard to reach. Welcome back to Mommy and Me Travel and Luxury, where we explore motherhood, travel, and homeschooling through a calm, intentional lens. I'm especially talking to the mom who loves the idea of showing her child the world, but doesn't want every trip to feel like a performance, a checklist, a rush. In this episode, I'm going to share how I think about slow luxury travel with children, especially as a homeschooling mom. We'll walk through what it looks like to plan around time as your true luxury, choosing a home base, building in space, and creating flexible itineraries that honor your child's curiosity and their limits. By the end, my hope is that you'll feel invited to imagine trips where you do fewer things on purpose, so you and your child can experience what you do choose much more deeply. Let me paint a picture. You've been planning this trip for months. You've researched. You've saved. You've coordinated schedules. Your child is finally old enough to really travel. And you have a list, a beautiful Pinterest-worthy list of everything you want to see and do. Day one, you land, you check into your hotel, and you head right back out because you have so much to fit in. Your child is tired, but you're excited. You've waited for this. Day two, you're up early. Museum in the morning, lunch at that perfect little cafe you read about or saw on Instagram, a walk through the historic district in the afternoon, dinner somewhere with a view. By evening, everyone is quiet. You tell yourself it's the good kind of tired. Day three, day four, day five. The pace doesn't really slow down. You're moving between neighborhoods, checking boxes, taking photos for later. Your child starts getting quieter, or maybe they get louder, maybe clingy, resistant, or overwhelmed. On the inside, you kind of feel it too, but you also feel the pressure. You've paid for this. You've arranged this. There's still so much to see. By day 7 or 8, when you finally have a slower afternoon, everyone's too depleted to really enjoy it. You come home. You're exhausted. Your child is exhausted. And when you look back at the photos, you realize they mostly capture the places and not the moments. Here's what I've noticed about this kind of travel. It's built on a few quiet assumptions that we rarely name. The first assumption is scarcity. We think I might never come back here, so I have to see everything now. That scarcity mindset drives us to pack more and more into fewer and fewer days. However, scarcity is usually a story we're telling ourselves. Even if you never return to that exact place, you will have other trips. your child will have other chances to learn, to explore, and to be amazed. One trip doesn't have to be everything. The second assumption is performance. We're traveling for the experience, yes, but often we're also traveling to prove we've traveled. We need photos. We need the story. We want to be able to say we saw the ruins, the temples, the markets. There's an invisible audience we're performing for, or maybe visible on social media, even if it's just a future version of ourselves. And it is fair to say that performance is exhausting. The third assumption is that more is better. More sights, more experiences, more memories. But that's not actually how our brains work, or how our children's brains work. We don't retain experiences by rushing through them. We retain them by being present inside them, by noticing details, by having time to ask questions. My daughter likes to say she's collecting data. We retain them by sitting with what we're learning long enough for it to really land. So, what does that look like in real life? Well, imagine you're in a city known for its ancient history. You've got 3 days. The do-it-all version looks like this. Day 1, major archaeological site in the morning, quick lunch, a museum in the afternoon, walk the historic district in the evening. Day 2, up early for another site with a guided tour. Lunch, different neighborhood, dinner. Day 3, you squeeze in one more neighborhood before heading to the airport. Your child sees a lot of beautiful things, but they're moving so fast that the beauty becomes almost abstract. They don't have time to wonder. They don't have time to ask real questions. They don't have time to sit with what they're learning and let it reshape anything inside them. And here's what I think is the real loss. They don't have time to just be with you in a way that feels unhurried. They don't get to see you noticing things, being curious, being present. They mostly see you checking boxes, uploading to social media, adding stories. That's the tension I want to explore today. Because when we slow the pace, we don't just change the mood of the trip. We change what's actually possible for learning, for connection, and for rest. So, what does slow travel look like instead? It starts with one simple principle: a home base. Instead of moving every day or every other day, you choose one place and you stay there for a week, maybe longer. This changes everything, because when you're not packing and unpacking, when you're not navigating new hotels, when you're not spending half your day in transit, you actually have time. From your home base, you build in what I call anchor experiences. These are the 2 or 3 things you genuinely want to do or see in that place. Not 10, not 15, 2 or 3. And if you have more time, maybe 5. Maybe it's a specific museum. Maybe it's a neighborhood you want to explore. Maybe it's a day trip to something nearby. You choose these intentionally based on what actually matters to you and your child. And then, and this is the part that changes everything, you build in space. Space is the unscheduled time, the afternoons with no plans, the mornings where you wake up and decide what feels right. This is where the real magic happens, because in that space, your child can notice things, really notice things. They can ask questions that come from genuine curiosity, not from a tour guide script. They can move at their own pace, rest when they need to rest, play, wander, be bored even. And you can be present with them instead of checking your watch and your itinerary. Let me give you a concrete example. Let's say you're spending a week in a place known for its ancient ruins and museums. Your anchor experience might be 1. A guided visit to the main archaeological site. You go early, you take your time, you ask questions. Maybe you hire a guide who specializes in families. You're not rushing through, you're spending a real morning there. Or a neighborhood walk or a market visit. You're learning how people actually live in this place, not just how tourists experience it. And maybe you have an opportunity to prepare a meal based on that market visit, or do some sort of tasting, some sort of hands-on and or cultural experience. That's it. 2 anchor experiences for the entire week. The rest of the time, that space I was telling you about. Maybe you visit a small museum on a day when you're both feeling energized. Maybe you find a quiet cafe and sit for an hour watching the city move around you. Maybe your child asks to go back to the archaeological site because they want to draw what they saw or ask more questions. Maybe you spend an afternoon in your accommodation, resting, reading, playing games together, ordering room service. Here's what happens in that space. Your child starts to know the place, not as a list of attractions, but as a real place where real people live. They notice the rhythm of the city, the way the light changes, the sounds, the smells. They have time to process what they've learned. They have time to be curious in their own way, at their own pace. And you get to actually enjoy being there. You're not performing, you're not rushing, you're not anxious about what you're missing. You're just present. That's what I mean by slow travel. It's not about doing nothing. It's about doing fewer things so you can do them with intention and presence. If you're a homeschooling or worldschooling family, slow travel becomes even more powerful because slow travel is education. When your child spends a week in one place, they're not just seeing it, they're learning it. Think about language learning, for example. If you spend 3 days in a city, you might pick up a few phrases. You might hear the language, but you don't really integrate it. If you spend a week or 2 weeks in one place, your child starts to recognize patterns. They start to understand how the language works, not just as words, but as a living system that real people use every day. They hear it in the market. in the cafe, in conversations around them. They have time to practice, to be a little bit brave, to ask questions. For my daughter, when we visited Kenya and Tanzania in East Africa, every day it seemed like she was learning more phrases in Swahili. And since we spent about a month in East Africa, towards the end of our trip, people started asking us how long we've been there because my daughter was able to say quite a few phrases and things, ask questions in Swahili. The same is true for history, culture, geography, and everything else. When you slow down, you're not just seeing a place, you're learning from it. You're noticing how people organize their cities, how they build, how they live. You're asking questions like, why are the streets laid out this way? What does this building tell us about the people who built it? How do families here spend their time? Those aren't questions you can ask when you're rushing. And here's the thing. This kind of learning is real education. It's not a field trip. It's not supplementary. It's the kind of deep embodied learning that homeschooling families are actually looking for. When you're worldschooling, when you're using travel as your primary educational tool, slow travel isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Because your child can't learn deeply from a place if they're only there for 48 hours. They need to settle. They need time to observe, time to ask questions and follow their curiosity, time to let the place actually change them. So, if you're thinking about world schooling, or if you're already doing it, maybe even if you're just homeschooling and enjoying the traveling experience, slow travel is how you make it work. Not logistically, but educationally. Okay, so you're convinced. Slow travel sounds beautiful. But how do you actually do it? Well, let me walk you through a framework that I use when I'm planning trips with my child. It's simple, but it requires you to think differently than you might be used to. So, step 1, choose your home base. This is the foundation of everything. Before you think about what you want to see, choose where you want to stay. Ideally, you're picking one neighborhood or small area where you'll spend your entire trip, or at least 7 to 10 days if it's a longer journey. This place should feel accessible to you. It should have a cafe nearby or a park, maybe a market. It doesn't need to be fancy, although we are truly about luxury, so if you'd like for it to be fancy, it can. But you want a place where real people live, not just where tourists stay. Or if you do pick a place where tourists stay, you want to be adjacent to that neighborhood. You want the local experience to be accessible to you. When you choose your home base, you're choosing rhythm. You're choosing familiarity. You're choosing the ability to wander without constantly consulting a map or feeling lost. Here's a practical question to ask yourself. Where could my child play safely while I sit and have coffee? And it doesn't have to be far, nor does it have to create any sort of space. But a place where you feel safe should definitely be your home base. That's the neighborhood where you want to spend most of your time. Step 2, identify 2 to 3 anchor experiences. These are the things you came for, the experiences that matter to you and your child. But here's the key: you're being selective. Instead of asking, what are all the things I should see in this city? Ask yourself, what is my child genuinely curious about? What would actually move them? Maybe your child is fascinated about ancient history. Then your anchor experience might be one major archaeological site and not 5. You'll spend a few hours there, move slowly, ask questions, sit and observe. Maybe your child loves nature. Your anchor might be one hike or one botanical garden where you can really notice the plants and animals instead of rushing through. This is the reason why I spent over a week doing safari drives in the Serengeti. Maybe you're interested in how people live differently than you do. Your anchor might be a cooking class with a local family, or a morning in a neighborhood market, or a visit to a community center where you can watch real life unfold. The point is, you're choosing based on genuine interest, not on a guidebook's ranking of must-sees or from an Instagram feed. And here's the beautiful part. Because you're only doing those anchor experiences, you can do them well. You can arrive early when it's quieter. You can linger. You can ask questions. You can sit and absorb instead of rushing to the next thing. Step 3, build in that space I was telling you about. Now comes the part that feels scary to a lot of us: leaving time unscheduled. If you're doing a 10-day trip, I'd suggest scheduling something specific for maybe 5 days. That leaves 5 days that are completely open. On those open days, you might have a loose idea of what neighborhood you want to explore or what you want to do, but you're not locked in. You wake up, you see how everyone is feeling, you decide. Maybe you plan to visit a museum, but your child woke up energized and want to explore the neighborhood on foot instead. You do that. Maybe you planned a walking tour, but everyone is tired, so you find a park and spend the afternoon there. You do that too. This space is where the real memories live. It's where your child notices things. It's where you have energy to actually be present with them instead of checking boxes. And here's something important. Space doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing things without a predetermined schedule. You might wander into a shop. You might sit in a cafe and watch people. You might follow your child's curiosity down a side street. You might have a long lunch with someone that you meet. You might just rest. All of that is valuable, and all of that is a part of the trip. Step 4, create a flexible itinerary. Once you've chosen your home base and your anchor experiences, you can sketch out a loose itinerary. But, and this is crucial, it needs to be flexible. Here's what I mean. Instead of saying Monday, museum, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., lunch at 1 p.m., neighborhood walk, 3 to 5 p.m., you say something like, week 1, settle in, explore the neighborhood around our home base. Visit one anchor experience when we feel ready. Week 2. 1 or 2 anchor experiences with plenty of open afternoons. One longer day out, one quieter day in. Week 3. Mostly open time. Revisit favorite spots, rest before traveling home, or, if permitted, pick another anchor experience. You're giving yourself a shape, a rhythm, but not a rigid schedule. And you're building in flexibility for the things you cannot predict. Your child getting sick, you getting sick, everyone being tired, something unexpected capturing your attention, the weather changing your plans. All of these things are unforeseeable. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking, and I want to address a few objections head on because I've felt these myself. Objection 1. Maybe your significant other wants to see and do more. They don't want to waste time. This is real for some, and it's worth having a conversation about. Here's what I'd suggest. You can frame it not as doing less, but as doing things more fully. Show your significant other what slow travel actually looks like. Maybe share some photos or stories from trips where you had time to really be present, or maybe even someone you know. Talk about what you actually remember from past trips. Is it the number of places you saw? Or is it specific moments, specific conversations, specific times when you were together without rushing? You might also suggest a compromise. Maybe you do 1 or 2 anchor experiences together as a family, and then your significant other can have some time to explore on their own while you and your child do something quieter. That way, everyone gets what they need. But here's what I'd really encourage. Have the conversation about what luxury actually means to you both. Because if luxury is about time, about presence, about being with your child without stress, then slow travel isn't doing less. It's actually getting more of what matters. But if there are other opinions, because as we've discussed, luxury is relative, then you might want to compromise and meet somewhere in the middle. When my husband and I went on our honeymoon in Italy, I really was looking forward to visiting Vatican City. I scheduled a very detailed private tour where we were able to really stop and look at some amazing pieces. And one thing that was actually on the ground was a plaque in honor of in St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. Well, I and my husband got married at St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. And I'd like to believe if we were rushing and not having that quiet moment to take everything in, I would have missed that opportunity. I would have missed that connection for being in the cathedral and noticing a connection to the place where I got married. In that simple example, that location becomes even more meaningful to me. Objection 2. Won't my child get bored with so much unscheduled time? This is a fear that I hear a lot, and I understand it. We're taught that kids need constant stimulation, constant activity. But here's what I've noticed. Kids are actually incredible at finding wonder when we give them space to do it. And this is coming from a mom of an only child, so Space and quietness, individualism, and self reflection is really important to me, as well as my daughter. And having those opportunities to be bored actually allows your child to be very creative and inventive. When there's white space, children notice things adults have learned to ignore. They pick up sticks, they watch insects, they find patterns in sidewalk tiles. They ask questions that seem random but are actually deeply curious. They imagine, they create, and they play. Boredom is not the enemy. Boredom is often the space where imagination is born. And when your child does get restless, that's information. Maybe they need a change of scenery. Maybe they need to eat. Maybe they need to run around. That's what space gives you. The ability to respond to what your child actually needs instead of dragging them through the next scheduled activity. Objection 3. Slow travel sounds nice in theory, but it's too expensive. Staying in one place for a week or more means expensive hotels. I hear this one too. And I won't pretend that slow travel is always cheaper because it isn't most of the time. Sometimes staying in one place for longer means higher accommodation costs per night. But here's the thing. When you slow travel, you're not spending money on transportation between cities. You're not paying for multiple hotel transfers. You're not buying tickets to 10 different attractions. You're not eating every meal at tourist restaurants near major sites. Slow travel often means fewer transportation costs, fewer attraction tickets, more time cooking in your accommodation or being in the same place, eating where locals eat, which can also be more affordable. And if budget is truly a constraint, there are ways to make slow travel work. You can choose accommodations with kitchenettes so you can shop at local markets and cook some meals at home. You can look for rentals in residential neighborhoods and not tourist centers. My favorite is actually traveling during shoulder season when accommodation prices are lower. You can also think out of the box and consider house sitting, pet sitting, or longer-term rentals that offer weekly discounts. Slow travel isn't about luxury accommodations unless you want it to be. It can be more so about luxury time. And you can create the luxury in many different budget contexts. So, I will leave you with a different set of questions. Instead of asking, how many things did we see? How many sites did we check off? How many photos do we have for social media? What if we asked, how did my child feel in this place? Did they have time to wander? Did they have time to rest? Did we have moments where no one was rushing? And did I get to be with my child in a way that I actually enjoyed? And for you, did I come home more connected or more depleted from my family? Did I learn something real or just collect locations? Did I feel like I was performing or like I was inhabiting my own life? Those are slow travel questions. Those are homeschooling through the world questions. Because in the end, what our kids remember, what we remember, isn't how many places we went. It's how we felt while we were there. And who are we to each other in those days? If something in this conversation has tugged at you, if you feel that quiet yes to travel slower, even just a little, I'd invite you to sit with one simple question. What would it look like to do less on your next trip on purpose? Maybe it's choosing one home base instead of three. Maybe it's cutting your list of must-sees in half. Maybe it's protecting 2 whole afternoons of space and letting your child lead. If you want to explore this more, I have a blog article on this same topic called The Truth About Luxury Slow Travel Paired with Homeschooling on my blog, Mommy and Me Travel in Luxury. If you're curious about how slow luxury family travel and homeschooling can weave together through language, culture, history, and everyday life, this is exactly what we talk about here. If this episode sparked ideas for you or challenged the way you've been taught to travel, I'd love to hear from you. You can subscribe or follow this podcast so you don't miss future conversations about motherhood, homeschooling, and intentional luxury travel. And if you try a slower pace on your next trip, even in a small way, I would genuinely love to hear how it feels for you and for your child. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Until next time, may your trips be slower, your bags be as heavy or as light as you need them to be, and your moments with your child be the real luxury.